Slants.
What's going on, huh? Draft this week. It's the 2022 NFL Draft. Sometimes they call it the NFL's annual selection show. I'm going to call it draft, though. And the Patriots, well, they're sitting there at number 21 in a draft that is chock full of players that can be of use to these New England Patriots. Over the next 22 minutes or so, we're going to get into all of it. Here's the game plan for today's program. Can't miss draft. Yeah. We're going to really ratchet up the heat on the Patriots. They can't screw this up. They cannot. Is there heat on Bill Belichick? We'll discuss that just a tiny bit as well. The best drafts ever? We're going to take a look at some of the history of the Patriots draft. And then, of course, we'll have the mega hot take. Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk, will join us as well. But first, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for my slant. Watch out! And we are up to our eyeballs and prospects right now, aren't we? It makes it hard to see the Patriots draft forest through the trees. But the overarching story of this draft is that on paper, the Patriots, as I said, cannot go wrong. Every single spot where they have a need, offensive line, linebacker, corner, wideout, all stacked. This is the proverbial one-car funeral. You cannot screw this up. Just like last year. You know, you have a quarterback sitting there. You need a quarterback, you take him. In a lot of past drafts, the Patriots were at the mercy of the 30 or so teams drafting ahead of them. And they had a lot of good players already, so Bill Belichick could get weird whenever he wanted to. But the chickens, they kind of came home to roost. The chickens that were Cyrus Jones or Duke Dawson or Derek Rivers, N'Keal Harry, Devin Asiasi, Dalton Keene, they all came home to roost. So the team right now is pretty slow, and they're not that deep. And they already had to spend a crap ton last offseason to buy guys at positions they failed to draft, like tight end. So, Robert Kraft, it didn't go over that big with him. Robert?
I think we had a great draft last year, and it made up for what happened the previous 4 years or so. And I look forward to hopefully having a great draft this year. That's the only way you can build your team for long-term and consistently.
That's a guy right there who just last month was turning up the heat on Bill Belichick. And that beeping in the background, that was not Robert Kraft backing up at all. That was him going dead straight forward at the Hall of Fame coach, the greatest of all time, and saying, you better keep it up. Well, opportunity and need have married up, and all the Patriots have to do is sit there and take the players who can help them. Right, Mego?
You make it sound so simple.
It is. Just sit there. Let it fall to you.
Happy draft week, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I want to touch on one thing you said there.
Go ahead.
Which was, in the past, we've seen, because they're waiting behind 30 other teams, Bill Belichick get weird. Well, Bill Belichick does not have the luxury of being weird in this draft. And I say that as somebody who loves the weirdness. I love when they get weird, all right? You can get some good stuff out of that. You can get Julian Edelman in the 7th. And then have that go.
Around into a rhyme.
Exactly. But you just can't do it in this draft because the needs, where you talk about needs marrying opportunity, exceed a lot of the opportunity that you have here, I'm sorry to say. Yes, it is a draft where you can get a lot of value out of the second round, the third round, the fourth round. But you also are looking at a team where your needs, for example, are corner, which is not even something that you struggled with getting an undrafted agent in J.C. Jackson. But then both your star corners leave in a calendar year. And you bring in somebody like Jalen Mills in the free agency, and he doesn't exactly, he's a fine player, but he doesn't fill the need.
And when you look at the context of who they're competing with, and that's what's most important to bear in mind. Look, the Patriots have a zillion places they can get help, and there's 2 zillion players who can help them. But in this draft, you have to be focused on the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins in winning your division. You're going to see those 2 teams 4 times between them, and you're going to see teams like the Las Vegas Raiders, San Diego, they play in the AFC West? Be that as it may. You're going to see some really high-flying teams. So it might be nice to look at tackle or guard, but you do have to think about team speed to deal with those teams. We also put it out to the folks.
Yes, from the stands. Tom, you put out a poll.
I did.
Here's your results.
Here came my poll, and the poll said, how much will Kraft's "you need to draft better" edict impact the direction Bill Belichick goes? 25% of you said plenty. Yeah, Bill heard that, and it should. 51%, and I think that I might be in agreement with this one, is not a bit, but it should. And then 24% were of a mind that, well, that's not really Robert's job, so hopefully not at all. Mego, comments?
Let's hear specifically from the people. Fire emoji says absolutely should. Belichick has been whistling past the graveyard one too many times. If he doesn't draft well this weekend, I'd relieve him of duties by Sunday.
Seems really harsh.
Ugh. All right, Nick says it's sad because I want it to affect our drafting decisions, but I don't think it will. We've definitely improved drafting-wise after last year's draft, which was great, but I'm still afraid until I see consistency.
Thank you, Nick.
Patriots in Espanol says, if anyone is aware of the mistakes made in some of the picks from the last years, it's definitely Bill. It's not like he wants to repeat them and take Burks in the first. He will, as always, do what he thinks is best for the team.
But sometimes he zigs when he ought to be zagging or zags when he ought to be zigging. And he does it because he loves to. Anyway.
You're trying to get me kicked off TV here, Tom. Steve says, where's the stay in your effing lane, Bob option?
Tough talk from Steve, basically.
And Lobster Bread says there should be a no, Bill doesn't give an S what Robert says choice.
A suit. Look, here's the interesting thing, and we'll hear from Mike Florio in the second block as we discussed a little bit of, whether or not Robert Kraft is entitled or ungrateful in turning up the heat on Bill Belichick. To me, I don't think he's either entitled or ungrateful. I think that he is really doing what Bill Belichick has done with his players. It's not what have you done in the past, it's what you're doing right now, and it's been kind of a string over the last few years. Now, 2020, you went to Lenore Ryan and got Kyle Duggar. He's turned out to be, at the very least, a starter, probably a borderline Pro Bowl player before it's all done. And then last year, you took the simple guys. 3 out of 4 were terrific. Stevenson and Mac Jones and, of course, Christian Barmore. So, Meg, they're making progress, but there are significant holes left to fill.
Well, one question I have is, do you see in this draft, because you say there's holes to plug up, are they going mostly for plug-and-play players, or are they looking for projects? Do they have the luxury
they
of
don't have that
projects?
luxury. I feel like they don't have that luxury, especially in the offensive line. What a team wants to do when it comes out of the draft is be able to say, okay, this is our group and this is how we would start the season. If it was September, we'd have this group. They can do that at wide receiver. They can do that at cornerback. I don't know if they can necessarily do that at linebacker and know exactly what they're going to get, and I don't think they can do it on the offensive line. So those are need spots. But again, fortunately, they have plenty of guys at those spots. Meanwhile, as we talk so much about the drafts, I want you guys to take a look at this. There is, from Pro Football Reference, a device called approximate value. It attaches a score to every player's season, and it's a useful measure. This year, Mac Jones, for example, was a 14. Tom Brady was a 16. Back in 2007, Brady was a 23. Shows you what a premium season would be. Jacoby Myers, he was a 9 this past year. Excuse me. Anyway, I looked at all the draft picks of Belichick from 2001 on, and I added up the approximate values for all the players during their careers, including their time elsewhere. These were the best. 2003 draft was Samuel Copen, also had Eugene Wilson in there and Tully Banta-Cain. That's the best draft they had. Gronk and McCourty in 2010. Check that out. Mankins Castle was a 47 over the course of his career. Check that out. So it's really interesting where they did great. And then worst drafts. Now look at the Mayo and Slater draft. Because Slater didn't have a position, he got no points in his annual value. But when we look at these drafts, 17, 18, and 19 are among the worst drafts they've had. Now there are reasons for some of them. The 18 and 19 drafts, they're still developing, but 17 is sealed. Most of those guys are gone. 18 is somewhat sealed, and 19 is largely to a degree sealed as well. That's as good as they're going to get. So there's your evidence.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. Do you remember what the value for one Rohrwasser was? AKA one of the weirdest picks and least successful picks that Bill Belichick has had in that string of what we can say mostly unsuccessful draft classes.
Rohrwasser, he got a 0. Also, I think there was Dave Stashelski. There was a player who was a -2. There was only one player with an approximate value of -2. Ladies and gentlemen, here are your New England Patriots 2022 draft picks. Not the names, but the positions. 21st overall, 54th, 85th. You see it right there. They made a couple deals yesterday, interestingly, to kind of get out of round 5. They hate round 5. But anyway, here's Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk to talk all draft talk. Let's get to a proposal. You and I did PFT on Monday for a couple of hours, and you have mentioned something many of us have thought of. Look, drafting a kid who succeeds and is at the top of his would-be profession and telling him, you're going to go work here for this long and you have no real choice in the matter is kind of un-American, but that's what the NFL draft does. You got a better solution?
Well, I do, but it's never going to be implemented because the draft is too big to die. They're not going to do away with the draft because if there was a different arrangement where the players actually got some say and had an opportunity to select based upon geographic location or opportunity or contract that was offered, or I want to work with this coach, or I want to play with these players. Whatever factors would drive the decision the player makes. Not everybody's going to pick the closest team to home, but that process of unveiling the selections would never be as compelling, would never be as organized, could never be something that would be crafted the way that the draft is. It would be the equivalent of the high school players having the piecemeal press conferences where they're sitting there with a bunch of hats and they pick one and they put it on. It would never happen Tuesday night, 8 o'clock Eastern, broadcast worldwide by ESPN and NFL Network. Right. They'd never be able to make that work. They wouldn't keep it under wraps, and you couldn't control it the way you can control the draft, where you tell all 32 teams this is what
every kid's going to want to play for the Raiders and the Cowboys and the Patriots, though. How do you fix it so that the Raiders, Cowboys, and Patriots don't get all the players?
Well, you use a salary cap. Within the salary cap, you have a specific allocation of dollars available to attracting rookies based upon how well you've done. If you want competitive balance to be honored, and look, back in the 70s, when the league was run by the Steelers, the Dolphins, the Raiders, and the Cowboys, they supposedly had competitive balance through the draft, and it didn't matter. Didn't matter then. The bad teams had dibs, and it didn't matter. And you didn't have free agency. You had those guys forever unless you traded them or cut them, and it didn't matter. So I'm not a big believer that competitive balance flows from this. But if we want competitive balance, let's limit the dollars available to the best teams, have more money available to the worst teams. And also, I hear that all the time. And I think you're just making the point to draw out my response. I don't think you believe this. Why would you want to go play for the Cowboys right now if you're a quarterback? They have a quarterback in Dak Prescott. Why do you want to go somewhere and sit on the bench? This isn't Oklahoma in the 1970s where Barry Switzer is going to recruit 7 blue chip 5-star talents and convince them to not play. You're going to go where you can play. You're going to go where you get paid. You're going to go where the opportunity is and where you see a spot to get your way. Not just great training, but get your way onto the field. That's why I always say, we had this conversation yesterday about Tom Brady at pick number 199. He wanted to be drafted. He wanted to be validated. By the time you get that late in the draft, you're better off not being picked because then you get to choose where I start my career, where I'm going to go get the best possible training, where I'm going to get the best possible opportunity. Yeah, you're not going to get a lot of money early on, but you're not going to get a lot of money if you're a late 6 or anywhere in round 7 draft pick. So that's how I think it would shake out. And the people who don't want the draft to go away, who love the experience of seeing the commissioner walk out to the podium, get booed, announce the pick, lather, rinse, repeat all night long on a Thursday night, they don't want to give that up. And they're brainwashed into believing that that's the only way. And everybody is brainwashed. Everybody, the players, they just accept it. Everyone that you interview. Well, you try to push back and all. Well, that's just the way it is. I did wherever I go. I'm going to be happy wherever I go. It's just an honor being nominated. They're programmed to say that, and it's never going to change.
And the most fascinating dynamic locally as we get ourselves enmeshed in all the picks and the possibilities, the overriding interest in New England here is the fact that Robert Kraft has put his thumb not necessarily on the scale, but on the shoulder of Bill Belichick and said, perform like you did last year. I know that you're the greatest coach of all time. I appreciate all you've done. Perform. That to me is one of the great subplots to the 2022 draft is that you have the Patriots and all Bill Belichick's accomplished and what's become, perhaps maybe even a slog to try and catch Don Shula and to prove a post-Brady success rate that approaches what Brady's done elsewhere. But Robert Kraft is exercising some pressure on Bill Belichick to perform.
Very easy to have peace and harmony when you get into the Super Bowl every other year. It becomes more of a challenge when you've gone 3 years without winning a playoff game, and Robert Kraft has been willing to come out and say that publicly, and he's also expressed his concern about the drafting and the development of young players. So, yeah, when the team slides toward the middle of the pack, when you see the Bills rocket past you, when you see the Dolphins nipping at your heels and maybe 1 year away from luring Tom Brady to South Florida, you get a little antsy. You get a little antsy. Look, you develop a taste for fine wine, and the Patriots have developed that taste. And now they're not necessarily nursing a bottle of Mad Dog, but they're back to the $20 a bottle cab. They want to go higher end again. And it's like I said, it's easy to be very supportive when things are going very well. It becomes more of a challenge when it's not resulting in the kind of accomplishments that you're used to.
So is Robert Kraft an ingrate, or is he just holding Bill Belichick to the standards that he holds his own players to?
I would say it's the latter. Hey, look, Bill Belichick wouldn't have been the coach there for 20 years if he wasn't as good as he was. Nobody's going to last that long if you're not as good as you are. It's not, the cliche popped up with the onset of free agency and the salary cap. What have you done for me lately? That's not the cliche that should be applied to the NFL. The cliche should be, what are you doing for me right now? Mm-hmm. And what can I expect you to do for me tomorrow? That's all that matters. And I don't know how many years before Bill Belichick is on the hot seat. And it's even weird to formulate that thought and articulate that string of words. But yeah, winning 6 Super Bowls does not give you the ability to go 15 years and just kind of wander in the wilderness and not put something together, especially when the guy they floated on an iceberg from a player standpoint has won 1 Super Bowl and may win another.
Mike Florio, that's why we have you on. Great stuff. Appreciate you very much. Good luck with the book. Good luck with the rest of the week. Thanks, Mike.
You got to make a hot take?
Yes, I do. All right. Looking at this draft class, I implore the Patriots start where last season ended, the inability to force the Bills to punt or even hold them to a field goal. Focus on your defense, please. Whether it's a linebacker like Nakobe Dean or corner like Trent McDuffie or Andrew Booth, it's tough to go wrong. J.C. Jackson's departure leaves your defense even less talented than it was before, and eventually you're going to have to replace Mr. Devin McCourty. Mm-hmm. So go get some smart players out there and rebuild this team's identity as a young, explosive, smart-as-hell defensive team and take down Josh Allen.
Take down Josh Allen! Josh Allen must die! Well, that might be excessive. Josh Allen must be contained. How's that? Sorry about that, Josh. I don't want that to happen. It was figurative. But you're exactly right.
Thank you.
I mean, you got to have a position where you can actually, if you want to get into a shootout with them, once in a while you have to stop the other team because the Patriots aren't hanging 40 on the Bills anytime soon. Let's get to the quick fire right now.
Let's go to quick fire.
Nicely done.
Dangling DEEBO. DEEBO Samuel, he says he wants out of San Francisco. His team reportedly says it's probably going to take 2 first-round picks to move him. Where do you see him most likely going at this point in time?
The New York Jets are very, very, very motivated buyers. Joe Douglas, the GM, he was in on Tyreek Hill. They might be interested in using that 10th overall pick on a player like DEEBO Samuel. Now, if they do that, that means Zach Wilson's in a position where he's got the toys around him. It's always interesting to watch how these teams operate when they have kind of the sort of Damocles over their head where you have to win or guys start getting pink slips.
Absolutely. Let's move on to another guy in San Francisco, Jimmy G, our old friend, the Jimmy Saga.
Yeah.
Is Garoppolo going to stay there, or is he going to move somewhere else? So where is he going to move?
Everything is going to be dictated, Meg, I think, this week by either on Thursday night when the teams who decide, okay, we don't want Malik Willis, we don't want Kenny Pickett, let's move on, or we were trying to get them and we didn't. So I think that's going to dictate a little bit of it, but say, for instance, Jimmy Garoppolo moves on and you find out that the 3rd overall pick, Trey Lance, is not what you thought. You have a Super Bowl caliber roster that just lost a capable quarterback and lost perhaps DEEBO Samuel. And you've just imploded your offense completely. So I don't think I think the Niners are backed into a corner.
And it coincides with the draft where it seems like there's not a lot of depth at quarterback. It's like the exact opposite of last season.
Exactly.
So it may work in Jimmy's favor either way. 8 is too much. 8 teams have multiple first-round picks. The previous record for this was 6 teams having multiple first-round picks. Is this going to make it harder for the Patriots to trade back if that's what Bill Belichick wants to do with the 21st?
Absolutely could, but it also makes it easier for them to move up because both Philadelphia and New Orleans just ahead of them are teams that do have those multiple picks. If they want to jump up, they could probably go ahead and do that. So for the Patriots, they have opportunities to go up if they want to, and they get a slipper.
All right, Tom, you're in the hot seat.
Yeah.
Worst draft advice. What is the bad advice in the past that you've had for the Patriots?
I'm glad you asked. 2010, I thought the Patriots should take Sergio Kindle in the first round. Sergio Kindle fell down the stairs.
Name.
Yeah, I know. He never played for the Ravens. He fell down the stairs. Came from Texas. He was a pass rusher. Never played. Patriots ended up with Gronk and Devin McCourty.
Best draft advice. This is where you get to crown yourself.
Yeah, they should have listened to me when I said to take Maurice Jones-Drew back in 2006. They instead took Chad Jackson. I also recommended Tyler Lockett a few years ago, and even Sterling Shepard. Any of those 3 would have been good. Didn't do any of them. There they are.
Let's move on. Close out with honesty is the best policy.
I
Look
love
at this nice little Instagram post.
Right, the fellas are into it.
All right, he's got high hopes for his teammates. 1,000 each for me and my dog. What do y'all think? Look at Damian Harris weighing in down at the bottom.
I love that. Bill gonna show this in squad.
That is a man who's been on the Patriots for more seasons than Kendrick Bourne, and he knows exactly where that comes back and bites.
Yeah, enjoy the hell out of Damian Harris. He enjoys his Celtics. You enjoy your Celtics. We have early edition coming up. Just after this, we're going to get deep on the Celtics in that. Mego, another great job by you. Congrats on the new gig.
Thank you.
Bye.